We've all been there, right? You followed the recipe perfectly, you put in all that time and effort, and what do you get? A dense, sad, flat loaf of bread. It's such a bummer. But don't worry, today we're going to put on our detective hats and solve this thing once and for all. Let's start the investigation.
So yeah, this is the big one. Why? Why didn't my bread rise? It's a question that's probably haunted bakers forever. But here's the good news. The answer almost always boils down to just a few key scientific ideas. To crack this case, we gotta first understand the science of the rise itself.
Okay, so at its core, it's actually pretty simple. Think of yeast as these tiny little living creatures. Their whole job is to munch on the sugars in the flour, and when they do, they burp out carbon dioxide gas. This gas gets trapped inside the stretchy, web-like thing made of gluten, creating thousands of little bubbles that puff up the dough. When that process breaks down, our bread just flops.
All right. Every good detective story starts with the most likely culprits, right? And in the case of our flat loaf, the prime suspects are the very things that were supposed to make it amazing. So let's bring them in for questioning.
Okay, suspect number 1, the yeast. 9 times out of 10, this is your culprit. The number one reason bread fails to rise is that the yeast was basically dead on arrival. If the yeast isn't alive, it can't do its one job, which is fermentation. It's literally like trying to start a car with no engine. So how can you tell if your yeast was an imposter?
So here are the dead giveaways. First, and this is the easiest one, check the expiration date. Yeast is alive, and it doesn't live forever. Second, think about where you stored it. Heat and humidity are its mortal enemies. But honestly, the most common mistake, the one we all make, is accidentally murdering our yeast with hot water. Let's take a closer look at that crime.
This slide right here shows what I like to call the Goldilocks principle for yeast. If your water's too cold, the yeast just stays dormant. It's literally asleep on the job. If it's too hot, well, you've killed it instantly. But in that just right zone, that's when it gets happy and active and ready to make your bread rise like a dream.
And this is the magic number. Seriously, burn this into your brain. 98 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It should feel like nice warm bath water on your wrist. Definitely not hot. You know, if you don't have a thermometer, it might be the single best tool you can add to your baking kit. Getting this temperature right is, well, it's pretty much everything.
Okay. So what if your yeast was alive and the temperature was perfect, but your bread still fell flat? It's time to widen our investigation. Because sometimes the yeast has accomplices, other ingredients in the bowl that are secretly sabotaging its work.
Our first accomplice, salt. Now, look, you need a little salt. It's crucial for flavor and for keeping the yeast in check. But too much salt, or even just dumping it right on top of your yeast, is a total disaster. It literally sucks the water right out of the yeast cells through a process called osmosis, and that just grinds them to a halt. When that happens, you get way less gas, which means you get a dense, tight bread instead of that beautiful, airy loaf you were hoping for.
All right, this next accomplice might surprise you, because isn't sugar supposed to be food for the yeast? And yeah, it is. But just like for us, too much of a good thing can be a very bad thing. A super high concentration of sugar does the exact same thing as salt. It causes that same osmotic stress, pulling water out of the yeast and making it sluggish. And believe it or not, the list of potential saboteurs keeps going. Cinnamon, for example, has natural properties that can shut yeast down. Strong acids, like vinegar or lemon juice, can make the dough a pretty hostile place for yeast to live. Even the preservatives you might find in other ingredients can stop your yeast dead in its tracks. The lesson here is, you always got to be aware of who else is in the bowl with your yeast.
So, we've grilled the ingredients. But what if the crime wasn't about what you used, but how you used it? It's time to investigate your methods and the scene of the crime itself, your very own kitchen.
Remember that gluten network we talked about? It's the whole structure that's supposed to trap all that gas the yeast is making. Now, if that network is weak, think of it like a fishing net with giant holes in it. It doesn't matter how much gas the yeast makes. It's all just going to leak right out. And the result? You guessed it, a flat loaf. So how do we build a strong network? The answer is all in the kneading. And kneading isn't just about mixing ingredients together, it's a literal workout for your dough. When you start, the dough is weak, it tears easily. But as you keep kneading, you're developing these long, strong, super elastic strands of gluten. You're basically creating a powerful, stretchy web that can effectively trap every last one of those precious little bubbles.
The temperature of your kitchen is another huge factor. A cold room? Well, that's going to slow your yeast way down, leading to a painfully slow rise or maybe no rise at all. But here's the twist. A room that's too hot can be just as bad. It makes the yeast work way too fast, like a sprinter in a marathon. It gets exhausted, produces a ton of gas, and then the whole structure just collapses under its own weight before it can be baked.
And here are a few other environmental clues to look out for. Is your dough too dry? The yeast can't really move around to find its food. Is it too wet? Then the gluten structure is going to be too sloppy and weak to hold its shape. And hey, even your tap water could be a suspect if it's got a lot of chlorine in it, because chlorine can really slow down yeast growth.
All right, after looking at all the evidence, from the prime suspects to their sneaky accomplices, from the method to the scene of the crime, I think we're ready to close this case. And more importantly, we're ready to arm you with the tools to make sure this crime never, ever happens in your kitchen again.
So, here it is. This is your detective's checklist. Before you even think about your next bake, just run through these questions. Is my yeast fresh and alive? Check. Was the water temp in that sweet spot? Check. Did I accidentally dump salt right on the yeast? Was the dough kneaded enough? This simple list right here covers pretty much every reason a beautiful loaf of bread can go wrong.
And just like that, the mystery of the flat loaf is solved. By understanding the why behind the recipe, you're not just a baker anymore, you're the lead detective on the case every single time. So the final question is for you. Based on everything we've uncovered today, what do you think was the real culprit in your kitchen?